Summerfest starts, the Brewers still suck, and flags have got to be flying off the shelves after the week we've had in Washington. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, it was a big week at the U.S. Supreme Court. As justices hand down three major rulings, the court avoids a major ruling on affirmative action but struck down a key provision of the Voting Rights Act and hands gay marriage advocates two big wins. Mayor Tom Barrett and other Milwaukee officials say they may defy a new state law abolishing most residency rules. A national survey finds that Milwaukee's South Shore Beach is one of the most polluted in the country, so stay out of the water. New England Patriot tight end Aaron Hernandez is arrested for murder, which may open a roster spot for Tim Tebow. The president heads off to Africa, a trip that could cost taxpayers $100 million. And no, they still don't have tours of the White House because of the sequester. The Senate passes a sweeping immigration reform bill. Later today, Governor Scott Walker signs the state budget after handing out a few vetoes. The budget will cut income taxes by more than $600 million. But first, we start with the Supreme Court's landmark rulings on gay marriage. On a 5-4 vote, the justices struck down the Federal Defense of Marriage Act and cleared the way for the return of gay marriage in California. The federal law had recognized only marriages between a man and a woman for purposes of federal benefits, but the court ruled that the law, which had been signed into law by President Bill Clinton, denied gay couples equal protection and was designed only to demean and degrade homosexuals. And that brought a strong dissent from Justice Antonin Scalia, who accused the majority of overreaching their power. And from Cardinal Timothy Dolan, who called the ruling a tragic day for marriage and our nation. Supporters of gay marriage, however, celebrated and saw the rulings as a milestone in a push for nationwide recognition of same-sex marriages. Now, joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, former State Representative Michelle Litchens, political strategist Linda Bruin, and media trackers Brian Sikma. Brian, did the court get it right?
No, I don't think the court got it right. I think you look at the reasoning that was used by Justice Kennedy, and Justice Scalia's dissent was well-reasoned. Mm-hmm. He pointed out that Justice Kennedy was not actually striking down parts of DOME. Parts of it still remain, but parts of the DOME that he struck down were struck down based upon the fact that he disagreed with the members of Congress' moral underpinnings when they voted on DOMA. That raises serious questions about the court. Do we really want 5 judges, unelected judges, old people, deciding social policy for this country?
Well, we have it.
5 old people.
Yeah.
You know, I think they get it right, and you have to take your biblical or your theologies aside, because the Constitution is not the Bible. So you have to make a separation between the Bible and the U.S. Constitution. And what they're in essence saying is discrimination is illegal. You know, civil marriages in 13 states now, I think it's going to just open up the floodgates. I think probably in the next 10 years, you're probably going to have
But is there a rational
states.
basis? I mean, essentially what the court has said is that there is no reasonable basis to define marriages between a man and a woman. I mean, this was a position held for 2,000 years by virtually every political figure, including the President of the United States, up until about 5 minutes ago. And now the court is saying there's no rational basis for Congress or the President ever to define marriage that way. Are you comfortable with that?
You know, my personal beliefs aside, you know, because I'm a Christian, and under our, you know, doctrines, we teach one thing, but again, we're not talking about biblical law, we're talking about the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, Michelle Litchens.
Just to add to that, besides the fact that I think that they did the wrong thing because we have a right to self-govern, our founding fathers gave it to us, just talking about that religious aspect, I have a right to live my faith, and if I don't want to make a wedding cake for a gay couple's wedding because that goes against my faith, I should have the right to do that. But now the U.S. Supreme Court says you don't.
Well,
it
doesn't infringe on other people's rights.
No,
there are lawsuits.
I'm
going to be the only dissenting vote maybe on this panel this morning. First of all, Justice Kennedy was the key swing vote here.
Right.
And what he honed in on, even though he's normally a very big states' rights supporter, was the fact that he talked about once a state allows same-sex couples to marry, the federal law can't treat them differently than heterosexual married couples. He focused under the equal protection under the law. That was what he decided was unconstitutional. I do think this opens the door for eventually nationalizing the recognition of gay marriage. That's why the gay rights supporters were so jubilant.
Because the same logic would apply.
Well, the same thing happened with abortion.
Right.
It's not the best way to change the social mores of the country or to change the laws, but that's in the end what
you jumped on Michelle, but there are these cases now that, you know, once you have said that we need to recognize these marriages, you know, same-sex marriages, that there have been lawsuits against bakers who refuse to bake wedding cakes for same-sex weddings. There are lawsuits against photographers who refuse to shoot that. So the question is, how are we going to balance out religious freedom with this freedom to marry?
In fairness to Kennedy,
but
in fairness to Justice Kennedy, I don't think he was going that far at all. I think he was sticking to the equal protection under the law. The bottom line, though, is legal experts are looking at this and saying it opens the door for that debate to go to this national
Isn't there
level.
a concern, though, that now traditional views, held by most mainline Christian churches, will now be regarded as hate speech and as discriminatory? So again, the next big fight is going to be what is the level of the accommodation?
This comes down to now moving into a First Amendment religious liberty fight. Do churches, Catholic, evangelical, otherwise, have a right to say, as a church, we're only going to recognize heterosexual marriage? And what we've seen happen in other countries that have legalized same-sex marriage is that has led to an encroachment on religious liberty. It's going to be very interesting to see if the court can even decide anything about that. You look at the decision that came out on DOMA, they came out and used the exact same logic. In fact, liberals, I know they're excited about this decision, but same-sex marriage advocates really didn't get everything they wanted in this decision. The reasoning is there, but the judges didn't quite go far enough because they know they're writing social policy instead of leaving it up to elected officials to handle.
Not only that, I think they're opening the floodgates just like they did to Roe versus Wade years ago, and many liberal justices will say that the court did the wrong thing by expanding abortion nationwide without the ability, like I said at the beginning, to write our own laws and write our social laws the way we feel right.
On DOMA, I actually think that the court probably came up with the right conclusion, but I would have done it on federalism grounds. I think that the grounds that they did it on, which was basically to say that traditional people who have traditional views are somehow beyond the pale, I think that is going to open up a very, very divisive series of debates. What has your glass half full this week, and what has your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt.
Well, it's half full because Republican senators actually voted for immigration reform. It's half empty because they're going to kill it in the House.
Michelle Litchins.
Well, my glass is half full because the Supreme Court decided that states had the right to write their own voter ID laws, but it's half empty because now we're not sure if states have the right to write their own marriage laws.
Linda Bruin.
Well, again, with Michelle, I'm a little different here. My glass is half empty because my glass is half empty because the Supreme Court struck down some key provisions of the Voting Rights Act, which had required states with a horrific history of voter suppression tactics to obtain federal approval before changing their election laws. But it's half full because the Attorney General immediately warned these states not to go too far in suppressing voter rights, or the Justice Department would take swift action.
Brian Sickman.
Well, my glass is half full this week because Wisconsin state lawmakers are looking to consider legislation that encourages private sector job creation, something that we've had in Wisconsin and we continue to need. But it's half empty because a recent venture capital bill that cleared the state legislature and is now going to be signed by Governor Scott Walker doesn't require the jobs that will be created with state taxpayer money actually be in Wisconsin.
Okay, my glass is half full because the budget that the governor is signing later today will cut taxes by a pretty big amount of money. It is half empty because there's still too much spending, too much bonding, and too much pork. Still ahead on Sunday Insight. He was the rock star of the Republican Party just last year. This year, Paul Ryan is trying to sell immigration reform to conservatives. And coming up next, President Obama wages war on coal and freely admits that it will cost you more to keep the lights on. The president launches a war on coal, but what will that mean for Wisconsin? President Obama has never made any secret about how he feels about coal, and because this is what he said back in 2008.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
Well, he didn't get cap and trade. Instead, the president says he's going to bypass Congress and impose new restrictions on coal plants through executive order. Environmentalists, of course, are enthusiastic, but a leading business group pointed out that nearly 65% of the power in Wisconsin comes from coal plants. And the president's plan will hit the local economy especially hard because higher electricity rates will hammer manufacturers. Your reaction, Michael?
I wasn't particularly supportive of the cap and trade, and coal has its place. But again, there's like 83,000 jobs connected with coal. And under Barack Obama, exports have doubled in the last 5 years. So I don't think this is going to really shut down.
Oh no, this is a big this is okay, Brian Sickman.
Well, if you recall, actually late last year and then early this year, there were several coal companies in Wisconsin that were hit by the EPA for not retrofitting their plants correctly. Now they'll tell you they were trying to do that properly, but when one company had to do that, they had to lay off over 200 workers to pay for the retrofit to their coal-fired power plant. This directly goes to jobs and economy in Wisconsin. We have electrical, and we have a small manufacturing base that's here. We have a lot of manufacturers that make small engines and that type of thing. Think of Briggs & Stratton. They use electricity. When those rates go up, they have to figure out where they're going to cut their costs. Labor force costs can be cut. Consumers are paying more. This goes to the heart of the Wisconsin economy.
Linda Bruin.
I think it affects us in Wisconsin in the short term. I think it will affect not only the economy, but it also will affect our energy rates. However, in the long term, what this does is it pushes an industry that has to go through major change in order to make itself more environmentally friendly into doing more exporting, where they've been going for the last 4 or 5 years. It also pushes them to find clean burning coal. But even the industry is saying that's what it does.
In Oak Creek, we have one of the most advanced coal burning plants in the country, and this is going to force them to spend maybe tens, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's going to go on everybody's electricity bill. I'm just trying to figure out how raising the cost of energy, raising the cost of health insurance, how this is going to help us get out of the economic doldrums we're in.
It's not. This is what happens when you have a president who lives in his ivory tower and doesn't know what it's like to sit around the average, dinner table and talk about how we're going to pay our electric bill this month and how we're going to keep our job. China consumes 50% of the world's coal. What are we doing about that? Nothing. In fact, we're setting ourselves up to not be able to play on an equal playing field with them. We want a clean environment. We want to use renewable energy, but we need to make sure that it's affordable.
There hasn't been enough incentives for the coal industry to really go clean and to develop that technology to the extent that they have. Even the coal. Well, I'm quoting coal industry experts
Will this
themselves
affect
saying
the climate? I mean, the whole point.
If it's part of a multi-phased plan, you can't all by itself. It's not going to do it. The United States all by itself isn't going to fix the world's planet.
Here's part of the problem, is that global temperatures have not been rising for the last 15 years, and yet because we worship at the church of global warming, we are about to tank the manufacturing sector of our economy based on this, what the scientific, and the president says that if you don't believe this, you're the Flat Earth Society.
Right.
Then I would love to have him explain why we are about to do this to the workers and the companies here in Wisconsin based on a global warming situation that hasn't occurred in a decade and a half. You may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's dish out some unsolicited advice. Michael Holt, you're first.
To professional football players, take a good look at what's about to happen to Aaron Hernandez, who has this gangster mentality, and after signing a $40 million contract with New England, is now in jail for murder because somebody said the wrong thing.
Michelle.
To Paula Dean, talk to your friend Oprah, sit on the couch, beg for mercy, and maybe you can keep some of your supplies in some of the stores.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my advice is to Florida's former governor, Jeb Bush. Look, you're right to support immigration reform, but I can't believe you said that the reason you supported it is that immigrants are more fertile and their higher fertility benefits Americans by providing a larger, younger workforce to take care of the old folks.
Yeah, Brian Sickman.
House Republicans in Washington, D.C. are right to be concerned about the Senate's immigration bill. But guys, you can't just complain about it. You got to put forward a comprehensive plan on your own that solves the problems you see in the Senate passed version.
Well, my unsolicited advice to Mayor Tom Barrett is if you really want to have people call Milwaukee the Fresh Coast, you probably should do something about that craptacular beach in your city. Coming up on Sunday Insight, Janesville's own Representative Paul Ryan tries to sell his own party on a plan to reform immigration. Well, last year he was the darling of the conservative movement, but this year Paul Ryan faces a tough challenge, selling a controversial sweeping immigration plan to his fellow House Republicans and to the conservative base. Ryan says the bill to toughen border security and provide a pathway to citizenship will be different than the one that passed the U.S. Senate last week on a 68-32 vote. But the issue has split Republicans. Last week, Senator Ron Johnson voted against the Senate bill. So will Ryan be able to sell immigration reform in the House, and will he be able to keep conservatives on his side? Michelle Litchens.
I think Congressman Paul Ryan has an incredible opportunity here to make a difference. There are few people that have better rapport with a large number of representatives because of his history on the budget, so he's had an opportunity to interact with a number of representatives.
He's getting hammered, though. This is close to a third rail for a lot of conservatives.
But this actually, he has respect from so many members. He also represents a very moderate district. It's not hard right. It's definitely leans more Democrat. So I think he can work with a lot of representatives that aren't going to be pulled way over to the Tea Party side of things.
All right.
Oh, well, first of all, I totally agree with you on this one. Absolutely. I think he's the only one who really could help sell it.
Yeah.
And it'll be real interesting to see what changes. He's not going to be kind of under fire to come up with some real meaningful change that the Democrats can swallow. But I think, frankly, he wouldn't be saying it if he didn't have a plan.
Okay.
So.
No, I do think he's going to be able to work with House Republicans. I do think at the end of the day, it's going to be a bipartisan majority that passes. I think you're going to lose a significant number of Republican congressmen. Look at the Farm Bill recently when that passed. They lost a lot of the conservative Republican base, but there were enough Democrats joining in support of it with Republicans.
Okay, now, but they're saying in the House that you have to have a majority of the Republicans before they're going to bring something up. The so-called Boehner rule.
And I think that's what remains to be seen. If they're actually going to be able to enforce that rule, if they're going to say, look, the Senate has done something historic, we might as well just try to get this through, because the GOP wants this off the table for the next election.
Okay, Michael.
Paul Ryan understands something that many Republicans don't understand, that you've lost the Hispanic vote. You can't be anti-immigration or, allowing the folks to come into the country legally. He's going to run for president. I mean, that handwriting's on the wall. Well. I have one thing. I will not stand close to any Republican congressman because they keep shooting themselves in the foot, and those bullets are going to stray and probably hit me.
Okay, now I guess you're more optimistic than I am about this, because I think this is going to be very complicated to be able to get a legislation that will go through this much more conservative House of Representatives that would then be acceptable to the Gang of Eight. The Gang of Eight in the Senate has not been open to any sort of amendment. Plus, the other dynamic is that a lot of conservatives just do not trust anything coming out of Washington. They don't trust the Obama administration to enforce the border. They don't trust what's going on inside these 1,000-page bills that are being negotiated behind closed doors.
I think people understand that we have de facto amnesty right now.
Yeah.
I loved what Marco Rubio said last week about that. He makes a great point. Paul Ryan is a very non-confrontational, honest, average kind of guy that is willing to sit down and talk with you about the differences so you can put together a bill that's going to work. And I really do think that he has he's going to get it done.
Is what they said this week the same thing as what you heard? Let's go around the table, Michael Holt.
Well, what the Germantown School Board said was they're going to put off a vote on the purchase of 200 Chromebook computers until they can reassess student needs. What I heard, and this is actually true, from one Germantown School Board member said he won't support it because Google owns Chromebook and they support the president.
Michelle.
Well, recently Mayor Tom Barrett said that he supports the resilience community and green tier and cleaning up the water and everything. But I think what we all heard this week was the South Shore beaches in Milwaukee are the second most polluted beaches in the nation.
When Republican House members say they oppose creating a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants, what I hear them say is that since they believe these immigrants will vote Democratic, they will never give them their citizenship.
Brian Sigma.
Well, Democratic State Representative Brett Halsey on Thursday asked Governor Scott Walker to veto the $648 million tax cut that's aimed at Wisconsin's middle class and working families. What I heard him, whenever he said that, was a troubled and confused state rep who doesn't quite understand what Wisconsin's middle class really wants right now.
Well, okay, President Barack Obama said he wants to fight climate change. What I heard was, under my plan of cap and trade, your electricity rates will necessarily skyrocket and you can kiss your manufacturing economy goodbye. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you are first.
Believe it or not, the state legislature, which actually included a $1 million grant to Teach for America to come up with alternative methods for teaching credentials. My loser, voting rights. The Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, and as a result, we're going to have chaos in the future, I can guarantee you. And one other thing you better keep in mind as you're thinking about this, they're saying that racism and discrimination no longer exists in America. I don't know which planet they're coming from.
Michelle Hitchens.
Now, I am no fan of the president, but the Obamas are my winners. I can't imagine their emotions upon entering the House of Slaves in Senegal and passing through the door of no return with his wife and family. That took tremendous courage. To have a black president visit that site says so much about how far our country has come. My losers are the two air-sucking bottom feeders from Fredonia, the mother and her husband, Was she allowed to do unthinkable things to her 12-year-old daughter while she watched? How dare you? Jail is not good enough for you. Hand these two poor excuses of human beings over to real mothers, and we'll see that justice is served.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my winner is the United States Supreme Court for striking down the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. My loser is celebrity chef Paula Deen, whose poorly worded non-apologies over using racist language years ago have turned what could have been an embarrassing moment into the unraveling of her empire.
Brian Sickma.
My losers this week are the 400 pro-abortion protesters who stormed the Texas Senate chamber last week to shout down a vote on a pro-life measure. That's not democracy, that's anarchy, and it's disgusting. Now, to my winner of the week, on Thursday, our great country will mark 237 years as a nation. The freedoms we enjoy and the high ideals we embrace set us apart from other experiments in human government. We are truly blessed as Americans, and may you all have a very happy 4th of July.
Well, my loser, the city of Milwaukee, which will continue its temper tantrum this week by voting to simply ignore the new state law abolishing residency requirements. Hey, do the rest of us get to ignore the laws that we don't like, or is that only for you, Mayor Barrett? My winner, all of us who get to enjoy one of the nation's greatest music festivals. Don't take Summerfest for granted. It's a huge success story and does this state proud. And I'm going to be there later today. Thanks for joining us, and join me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.